The Dragon King bought the burned girl for 1 coin. Not gold, not silver, iron. A single black war coin struck the marble floor of the Ember Court and rolled in a slow circle before stopping at Raina Ashwyck's bare feet. The court laughed because 1 coin was not a price. It was a verdict. Raina stood in the center of the hall with copper debt chains around her wrists, ash still caught beneath her fingernails, and a gray veil covering the left side of her face. The veil had not been given out of kindness. House Ashwyck made her wear it because guests disliked seeing the scar their kitchens had left behind. Or so, the record said. 1 burned servant girl for a war debt. 1 iron coin to make the insult legal. 1 body no noble house cared to keep. Lord Varric Thorn, master of debts and voice of the lower council, bowed toward the throne. Your Majesty, House Ashwyck offers this servant in settlement for unpaid war levy. No gold remains, no sons remain, only this. Raina kept her eyes on the coin. Black iron, oidmint, war-stamped. Something about it made the skin beneath her scar ache. At the far end of the Ember Court sat Dragon King Draven. He did not recline on the throne. He occupied it like a weapon waiting to be used. Tall, black-haired, broad-shouldered, wrapped in dark scale armor, he watched the court with molten gold eyes that made even silence kneel carefully. Behind him, on the obsidian wall, his dragon shadow stirred horned, winged, and immense. The court said his fire had ended the Ash Wars. The court also said his fire had forgotten mercy. Raina believed both. Lady Merel Voss, a royal council widow with ruby chains at her throat, smiled down at Raina as if pity were something she could lend cheaply. If the price displeases your Majesty, the girl may be burned with the failed debt ledgers. It would be a cleaner settlement. Several nobles laughed. Raina did not. She had learned long ago that laughter in court was often only a softer kind of blade. Draven's gaze dropped from Varric to her veil. Remove it, he said. The hall quieted. Raina's fingers curled once beneath the chains. A guard stepped toward her, but she moved first. She lifted the veil herself and let it fall from her face. The court saw the scar. It ran from her left temple across her cheek and disappeared beneath the collar of her soot-gray servant dress. The skin there was uneven, drawn tight near the eye, pale in some places, darker in others, but her eye itself remained clear, blue-gray, and unlowered. The laughter thinned. Not from compassion, from discomfort. Draven rose from the throne. The dragon shadow behind him lifted its head. Who burned her? He asked. No one had asked that in 2 years. Raina felt the old memory move behind her ribs, smoke under a kitchen door, nobles screaming for ledgers before children, blue light beneath a locked pantry floor, and Morel's voice ordering the servants to say oil had spilled. Lord Varric answered smoothly. A kitchen fire, servant carelessness. The Ashwyck house record was signed. Raina looked up. For the first time, her voice entered the court. Not the fire, she said softly. The lie after it. The hall went still. Draven's eyes narrowed. Morel's smile disappeared. Raina should have stopped there, but the coin at her feet had begun to hum. A cold hum. Not iron. Water under stone. She was burned the night. A water dragon relic vanished from House Ashwyck, Merel said quickly, before Draven could question her. A relic later proven false. The girl was near the kitchens when the fire began. Nothing more. Nothing more. Raina heard the old phrase as if Morel had pressed it against her scar herself. Nothing more than a servant. Nothing more than a damaged face. Nothing more than a body to pay debt. Draven descended the throne steps. Each step made the braziers bend toward him. Heat rolled outward, and every noble near the aisle lowered their gaze. Raina braced herself. Heat had been her enemy since the kitchen fire. Candlelight, oven stone, summer air, everything warm knew how to find the old wound. But Draven's heat did not strike her scar. It struck the coin. The black iron war coin split with a sound like ice cracking in deep water. A thin blue-silver light shone through the seam. Draven stopped. For the first time, the Dragon King looked not merely dangerous. He looked uncertain. Lord Varric took 1 step back. Majesty, do not touch it, Draven said. No one moved. Raina stared at the cracked coin. Something inside it was alive with cold light. The ache beneath her scar, sharpened until her eye watered. She tried to blink the tear away, but it slipped down the burned side of her face and fell onto the coin. The moment it touched the black iron, the court's fire changed. Not extinguished. Remembered. Every brazier flame bent inward toward Raina. The dragon shadow behind Draven opened both wings. A wave of royal dragonfire burst from the obsidian wall, not wild, not attacking, but summoned by recognition so ancient it moved faster than command. Nobles screamed. Guards fell back. Draven thrust out a hand. Down! Raina could not move. The dragonfire reached her, and the coin answered first. The cracked iron opened like a drowned shell, revealing a tiny blue-silver scale hidden inside the metal. Raina's tear struck it again. The scale flashed, and the dragonfire bent around her body as if it had found an old riverbed carved through flame. The fire did not simply refuse to burn her. It changed. Gold and red broke apart into thousands of blue-silver shards. Each shard became a living scale, cool as rain, spinning around Raina's shoulders, wrists, and scarred cheek. They did not hide her burn. They guarded it. The court fell silent. The scales had not come from nowhere. They had come from the Dragon King's own fire. Draven stood at the foot of the throne steps, staring as if the world had spoken a language he had thought dead. His dragon shadow lowered its massive head, not to Raina, to the scale inside the coin. Morel's ruby necklace darkened one gem at a time. Lord Varric whispered, "That bloodline was drowned." Draven turned his head slowly. "What bloodline?" No one answered. The blue-silver scales around Raina pulsed once, and the scar beneath them cooled for the first time since the night it was made. From the cracked coin, a drop of water rose upward instead of falling. Inside it, Raina saw a vision of a dragon made of rain and moonlit scales, chained beneath a burning city. Then every dragonbone pillar in the Ember Court began to weep. Draven looked at Raina, his voice rough with something too old to be surprise. "You were not sold to pay a debt," he said. The water drop trembled between them. "You were hidden inside one." And beneath Raina's scar, something blue-silver woke. The first pillar wept salt water. Not rain, not melted frost. Salt water. It slid down the black dragonbone in thin, shining lines, gathering in the carved grooves where old battle names had been etched after the Ash Wars. The nobles nearest the pillar scrambled away, as if water were more frightening than flame. In the Ember Court, perhaps it was. Dragonfire could be commanded, witnessed, praised, and turned into law. Water had no place there except in servant basins and battlefield graves. Raina stood in the center of it all, with blue-silver scales circling her shoulders like pieces of living moonlight. They made no sound when they moved. They only turned slowly, shielding the scarred side of her face from the heat that still rolled through the hall. The cracked iron coin lay open at her feet. Inside it, the tiny scale glowed brighter with every tear the pillars shed. Draven did not take his eyes off it. "Seal the doors," he said. The command struck the guards like a whip. The great bronze doors of the Ember Court slammed shut. Nobles cried out. A few protested at once, but one look from the Dragon King silenced them. His dragon shadow remained lowered behind him, head angled not toward Raina, not toward the court, but toward the scale inside the coin. As if the shadow knew it, as if it mourned it, Lady Morel recovered before anyone else. "Majesty, this is no settlement. This is contraband sorcery brought into your hall under debt law." Raina looked at her. The old fear moved first. Servant fear. The kind beaten into bone by years of knowing that noble voices became truth faster than witnesses could breathe. But the scales around her cheek cooled the scar, not hiding the pain, letting her stand inside it. Draven turned toward Morel. "You said the relic was false." "I said it was proven false." "By whom?" Morel's ruby necklace had gone nearly black. Only one stone at her throat remained red, pulsing faintly as if trying to remember its color. "The lower council," she said. Lord Varric stepped beside her too quickly. "And the Ashwyck record, Majesty." The relic vanished in a servant fire. The girl was found near the pantry where it had been stored. Her injuries were tragic, but the conclusion was clear. Raina's hands tightened. A pantry. They had never called it that before. In the house record, it had been a kitchen shelf. In the debt ledger, an oil room. Now, a pantry. 3 names, for one locked door. Draven heard the shift too. His eyes moved to Raina. What was in that room? The court turned on her again, not with laughter now, with hunger. A scarred servant could be pitied. A strange servant could be feared, but a servant who contradicted ledgers became useful to no one and dangerous to everyone. Raina looked at the cracked coin. The blue-silver scale inside pulsed once. She saw the memory again, smoke crawling under the pantry door, Morel's voice on the other side, children screaming elsewhere in the house, and something cold pressed into Raina's burned palm as she fell. A scale. No, not pressed into her palm, pressed into the coin. Hidden there, after. I do not know what the relic was, Raina said. Morel breathed out softly, as if relieved. Raina lifted her eyes. But I know the fire was started after it disappeared. The hall sharpened. Draven stepped closer. The scales around Raina shifted between them, not blocking him, not threatening him, only measuring the heat that came with him. His mouth tightened at the sight, as if it offended something old in him that his own fire needed permission near her. Who started it? He asked. Raina wanted to say, Morel. She wanted it so fiercely her throat hurt. But wanting was not proof. And servants who accused nobles without proof were usually buried under the word hysterical before sunset. So she answered with the one truth no one could easily burn. The first thing they carried from the house was not a child, she said. It was a sealed copper box. Morel's face went still. There. The blue-silver scales lifted from Raina's shoulders and turned toward the council widow like small living blades. Draven saw. Where's that box now? No such box entered council custody, Morel said. The tiny scale inside the coin flashed. Every brazier in the hall bent toward her and turned blue at the tips. A low sound moved through Draven's dragon shadow. Not a growl, a broken call. Raina felt it in her ribs, where the vision of the chained water dragon still shimmered like a wound under deep water. Then the scale spoke. Not in words the court could understand. In pressure, in cold, in the sudden taste of rain after a battlefield burns. The water running down the pillars gathered on the floor and flowed into a thin circle around Raina's feet. Within the circle, the marble darkened and an image formed. A city on fire, dragons overhead, a river boiling, and beneath the river, blue-silver bodies chained by black iron, their wings pinned under ash stone. The court recoiled. Draven's face changed. The Dragon King looked at the vision like a man seeing the crime his throne had inherited. Varric shouted, "Illusion!" The water answered by rising into the shape of the missing copper box. It turned slowly in the air. On its lid burned the mark of House Ashwyck. Beside it, hidden under the latch, was the seal of the Royal Council. Merrily stepped back. Draven's voice came soft enough to be terrifying. You told me the water dragon line drowned in war. It did, Merrily said. The water box opened. Inside lay a child-sized bracelet made of blue-silver scales, blackened by fire at one edge. Raina stopped breathing. Beneath the collar of her servant dress, under the edge of her scar where no one had ever looked closely, something answered. A faint ring of blue-silver light appeared at her throat. Not jewelry, not burn. A scale mark. The court saw it. So did Draven. His dragonfire flared behind him, violent and gold. But the moment it touched the air around Raina, it softened into blue-silver scale light again. Draven looked at the mark on her throat, then at the bracelet in the water vision. His voice roughened. That was not a relic. Raina touched the glowing mark with trembling fingers. The blue-silver scales around her bowed inward, as if recognizing the place where they belonged. Morel whispered, "Impossible." The water on the floor spread suddenly outward, racing beneath the court's feet. Everywhere it passed, old ash lifted from the marble, revealing words carved under the stone and sealed there since the Ash Wars. The last drowned heir was not dead. The court fell silent. Then the dragon-bone pillars wept harder, and from somewhere far beneath the palace, something enormous knocked once against iron chains. The sound beneath the palace changed the shape of the court. Nobles who had laughed at one iron coin now backed away from the water spreading across the marble. Guards reached for swords and found their hands shaking. The dragon-bone pillars wept steadily, salt water running down their black ribs, as if the palace itself had finally remembered grief. Raina stood inside the blue-silver circle with the scale mark glowing at her throat. The mark did not hurt. That frightened her more. Pain made sense. Pain had rules. Pain had followed her from the Ashwyck kitchens to the servant stairs, from the servant stairs to the debt hall, from the debt hall to this court where she had been priced like scrap iron. This coolness was new. It made the scar along her cheek feel less like damage and more like a door someone had tried to burn shut. Lady Marell broke the silence first. "Majesty," she said, each word careful now. "If something beneath the palace has answered her, then she is not merely a debt servant. She is a breach." Raina looked at her. A breach. Not girl. Not witness. Not survivor. A hole in the wall where truth might enter. Lord Varric seized the word eagerly. The council must contain her. The water dragon bloodline was condemned after the Ash Wars for a reason. Their blood bends flame. Their tears can call drowned beasts. If she wakes whatever was chained below. Chained by whom? Draven asked. Varric's mouth closed. The question struck harder than accusation. Draven descended the last throne step. The dragonfire behind him still burned gold and violent, but around Raina it softened into blue-silver scales. The closer he came, the more the scales moved, not away from him, but between them, as if teaching his fire a boundary it had forgotten. Raina should have stepped back. She did not. Draven stopped at the edge of the water circle. His golden eyes moved to the glowing mark at her throat. "Does it hurt?" The question was quiet enough that the court had to strain to hear. Raina hated that it nearly broke her. "No," she said. "That is why I do not trust it." For a moment, something almost human crossed his face. Not pity. Recognition. Then the palace floor knocked again. This time, the black marble split. A crack ran from the base of the throne to the circle around Raina's feet. Water surged through it, clear and cold, carrying flecks of blue-silver light. The tiny scale inside the broken coin lifted into the air and turned toward the throne dais. Not toward Raina, toward the space beneath Draven's throne. Draven saw it. His jaw tightened. Marell stepped in front of him. "The lower vaults are sealed by war law." "Whose war law?" "The surviving houses. Mine is a surviving house. Your Majesty's line survived because the water dragons did not." The words left her mouth too cleanly. Raina felt the court hear it. Draven did too. His dragon shadow rose full behind him, horned head nearly touching the high darkness above the hall. Heat rolled from its wings. Several nobles dropped to their knees. But Raina saw what others did not. At the center of the dragon shadow's chest, fire burned black. Not red, not gold. Black, like a wound that had never cooled. The blue-silver scales around her whispered against one another. Mercy drowned. Raina flinched. Draven's eyes snapped to her. "What did you hear?" She hesitated. The council was watching. Marell was waiting. Varric already had the face of a man preparing the next charge against her. But lies had burned her once. Silence had kept her scar alive. Raina looked at the black fire inside the dragon shadow. "Your fire has a drowned place in it." The court recoiled. Varric pointed at her. "She curses the king in his own hall." Draven did not move. "Let her finish." Raina's voice trembled. "It is not dead. It is thirsty." The word changed the air. Draven looked as if she had named something he had spent years refusing to feel. Marell's rubies went completely black. "No more," she said. "This girl is not a witness. She is a water dragon remnant, and remnants do what remnants were made for. They drag kingdoms back into old wars." Raina turned toward her. "I was made to scrub ash from kitchen stones." "You were made," Marell said coldly, "to be found when someone needed a weapon." The blue-silver scales around Raina went still. There it was. Not denial. Fear sharpened into confession. Draven heard it too. His voice dropped. "Found by whom?" Marell's expression closed. The court doors shook as someone outside tried to open them. Draven had sealed the hall. No one entered. No one left. The crack in the floor widened. Beneath it, old stairs appeared, slick with water and lined with black iron hooks. The water flowed down instead of up, pulling the broken coin, the tiny scale, and every fallen tear toward the darkness. Raina felt the pull at her throat mark. Her knees weakened. Draven stepped forward. The scales flashed between them, warning him. He stopped himself so suddenly his hand clenched at his side. That restraint meant more than a rescue would have. "Can you stand?" he asked. Raina almost laughed. Not from humor, from the strange cruelty of being asked that after being sold, accused, revealed, and pulled toward a chained thing beneath a palace. "Yes," she said. It was not entirely true, but it became truer when she said it. Morel turned to the guards. "By council authority, seize the girl before the lower seal breaks." No guard moved. Not because they trusted Raina, because Draven's dragon shadow had lowered its head over the stair. Varric tried another path. "Majesty, if she enters the lower vault, whatever sleeps beneath may claim her. If it claims her, it may claim your fire through her tears." Draven looked at Raina, then at the stairs. Raina saw the choice forming. If he let the council take her, he kept his throne away from the unknown. If he took her below, he walked toward a truth that might make his own fire guilty. "Debt law gave her to me," Draven said. Raina's chest tightened. "Given." The word was still a chain. Draven looked at her before the hurt could harden, but it did not make her silent. The scales around her shifted once, soft as rain. He turned back to the court. "She goes below as witness." Morel's voice sharpened. "And if the witness becomes the threat?" Draven's golden eyes burned. "Then I will hear the threat speak before I let cowards name it for her." No one answered. Raina stepped toward the open stair. The blue-silver scale floated ahead of her. Draven walked beside her, not touching, his heat held brutally in check. The living scales circled between them like cautious stars. At the first step, water rose around Raina's ankles. Cold, familiar, impossible. A voice moved through the flooded dark below. Not human, not quite dragon. "Little river blood." Raina stopped breathing. The voice spoke again, and this time every flame in the ember court bent low. "They burned us to teach fire cruelty." The lower vault doors opened beneath the stair. In the darkness, a vast blue-silver eye lifted behind black iron chains. And Draven's dragonfire went out. Darkness did not last. The scales around Raina lit first. One by one, the blue-silver pieces circling her body brightened until the flooded stairway appeared beneath them. Black iron steps, walls slick with salt water, old claw marks carved so deeply into stone that no human hand could have made them. Draven stood beside her in the sudden cold, his golden eyes still burning, but the fire behind them had gone quiet. No royal heat, no throne flame, no dragon shadow breathing fire over his shoulder. Only a king in darkness, forced to stand beside the girl his court had sold for 1 coin. Raina looked at him before she could stop herself. He noticed. "Do not mistake silence for death," he said. His voice remained controlled, but something in it had lost its armor. From below, the vast blue-silver eye blinked behind the iron chains. The water rose higher around Raina's ankles, then her calves. It did not pull her down now. It waited, as if even the flood knew the difference between calling and dragging. Draven stepped onto the last stair. Every black iron chain in the lower vault tightened. The eye behind them narrowed. The voice returned, deeper this time. "Firechild." Draven went still. Raina felt the name strike him harder than insult. Not Dragon King, not Majesty, Firechild. As if the chained thing remembered him from before crowns had made him untouchable. Draven's hand moved toward the sword at his side. The water dragon laughed. The sound rolled through the vault like rain over a battlefield. "Steel did not chain me, little flame." The scales around Raina shivered. The lower vault opened fully before them. It was larger than the ember court above, but built without beauty. Black iron ribs crossed the walls. Salt water covered the floor in a dark mirror. At the center, chained beneath a ring of dragonbone spears, lay a colossal dragon made of blue-silver scale, river-dark shadow, and wounded light. Its wings had been pinned to the stone. Its throat was wrapped in a collar of red-gold fire runes. Not dead, not free, not whole. Raina pressed a hand to her scar. The dragon's great eye turned toward her. Little river blood. Her knees nearly failed. Draven saw and shifted toward her, then stopped before touching her. The blue-silver scales between them brightened once, not warning him away in fear, but reminding him that her body had spent too long being handled by law and debt. His restraint held. "What is this place?" Raina asked. The water dragon's gaze moved from her to Draven. "Ask the throne that drinks from me." Draven's face hardened. "I did not know this chamber existed." The dragon's eye softened with something almost like pity. Kings rarely know what keeps their fire clean enough to worship. Raina felt the words enter her scar. Clean enough. The red gold collar around the dragon's throat pulsed. Far above, in the Ember Court, nobles shouted behind sealed doors, their voices faint as thunder trapped inside walls. Draven stepped into the water. It hissed around his boots. "Who chained you?" The dragon's wing shifted against the spears. Pain moved through the vault. Raina felt it in her cheek, her throat mark, the place where the hidden scale inside the coin still hovered before her like a tiny moon. "The surviving firehouses," the dragon answered. "The councils that feared drowning more than burning. The kings who accepted mercy but did not ask, whose throat it passed through." Draven's eyes turned colder. "My line?" "Your line inherited the lie." Raina looked at the red gold runes. They were old, but not ancient. Not old enough to belong to the first dragons. Newer. Court-made. War-made. "What did they take from you?" she whispered. The dragon looked at her scar. "Not what. Who?" The water trembled. A vision rose across its surface. A burning city, ash falling like black snow, water dragons circling above a river, not attacking the fire dragons, but cooling the flames before they reached children, hospitals, grain houses. Then the council banners appeared. Men and women in flame-colored robes stood around a ritual pit. Blue-silver dragonlings were dragged beneath dragonbone spears. Their tears were caught in red gold vessels and poured into the fire dragon bloodline. Raina heard herself make a small sound. The water dragon's voice lowered. They called it victory, then balance, then royal mercy. Draven stared at the vision, as if each image cut into him. Raina understood before he did. His fire had not always spared the innocent, because fire remembered mercy on its own. Someone had chained mercy beneath the palace and fed it into the throne. Draven looked at his hands. No flame answered them. For the first time, the Dragon King seemed afraid of what his power had cost before it reached him. Raina looked at the dragon. "Why did my tears change his fire?" "Because your blood remembers water before war." The blue-silver scale inside the broken coin drifted to Raina's throat mark. The mark brightened, forming the faint outline of a bracelet beneath her skin. The dragon's great eye narrowed. "They burned you to hide the air mark." Raina stopped breathing. The kitchen fire, the locked pantry, the copper box, the scar no veil had ever made less visible. "They knew," she whispered. The water dragon closed its eye once. "They failed to kill the mark, so they made the scar louder than the truth beneath it." Draven turned toward the stairway. The look on his face would have made the Ember Court kneel if it had seen him. "Merelle," he said. The name carried no shout, only sentence. A soft clap came from above. Raina turned. Lady Merelle stood halfway down the flooded stair, her ruby necklace now completely black. Lord Varric behind her with 2 council guards carrying a sealed copper box. "So the drowned beast still tells stories," Merelle said. Draven's hand went to his sword. "You entered after I sealed the hall. I helped design the lower seals." Her smile was calm again, terrible in its confidence. "Did you think the council would leave a water dragon claim beneath your throne without a way to harvest it?" The blue-silver scales around Raina sharpened. Draven moved in front of her. Raina stepped out from behind him. "Not far. Enough." Merrill's gatse flickeret. "You burned me," Raina said. Merrill looked at the scar, then at the glowing mark beneath it. "We tried to save the kingdom from what you might wake." "No," Raina said. "You tried to bury what you had already chained." The water dragon stirred. For the first time, one black iron link cracked. Varric opened the copper box. Inside lay a red gold collar small enough for a human throat. Raina's blood went cold. Merelle lifted it carefully. "The last water dragon heir can free the beast, or she can be fitted properly and keep the king's fire merciful for another generation." Draven's vanished fire returned in his eyes, gold and violent. But the vault did not warm. The collar in Merelle's hands opened like a mouth. and every blue-silver scale around Raina turned toward her throat. The collar wanted her. Raina felt it before Morel took another step. The red gold thing opened in the council widow's hands like a living mouth, its inner rim lined with tiny runes that glowed the same color as Draven's throne fire. Every blue-silver scale circling Raina pulled toward it, not willingly, but as if the collar had learned the old language of obedience. The water dragon stirred against its chains. Do not let it close. The warning moved through the flooded vault and entered Raina's bones. Draven heard it too. His sword came free with a sound like black ice breaking. Drop it. Morel did not look afraid. That was what made her terrible. She stood on the lower stair in her blackened ruby necklace, holding the collar with both hands while salt water rose around the hem of her flame-colored gown. Varric hovered behind her with the copper box open, his face pale but committed. The two council guards looked less certain, but fear of Morel was still stronger than fear of truth. For once, Morel said, listen before you threaten what you do not understand. Draven's dragon shadow rose behind him, fireless but immense. You burned her. I preserved a claim. You scarred a servant girl. No. Morel's voice sharpened. We found the last living water dragon heir hidden in a debtor house, carrying a mark that could wake the beast beneath your throne. We had two choices. Kill her and risk the bloodline crying out through death, or damage the mark enough to keep it silent. Raina's hand went to her scar. Damage. The word was too clean. It made a deliberate burning sound like chipped porcelain. The scales around her face trembled violently. The coolness they gave her faltered, and for one breath the old heat returned to the kitchen smoke, the locked pantry, the breathless dark, hands dragging her out, only after the fire had done what it was meant to do. Draven turned his face toward her. She hated that he saw. She hated more that he did not look away. What fire? He asked. Morel's silence was brief. So brief. Draven stepped into the water. What fire did you use? Varric answered without meaning to. A royal ember cannot be traced after 2 years. The vault went still. Even the water stopped moving. Draven looked at him. Varric realized too late what he had given away. Raina felt her scar turn cold. Not healed. Named. The fire that had burned her had not been a kitchen accident. It had not been spilled oil, servant carelessness, or riot flame. It had been a royal ember, stolen from the same dragonfire the court praised as victory. Draven's face changed slowly. Horror did not soften him. It made him dangerous in a quieter way. My fire, he said. Morel lifted the collar slightly. Your throne's fire, not yours alone. The crown has stores, rituals, old embers kept for war and containment. My fire, he repeated. Raina heard the wound under the words. She understood it before he could say it. The fire he had believed needed mercy had been used to burn the one bloodline that could return mercy to it. The water dragon's eye lowered toward him. Firechild, guilt is another chain. Do not wear what others forged. Draven's grip tightened around his sword. But guilt had already found him. Raina saw it settle across his shoulders heavier than armor. Morel saw it too, and struck it once. Now you understand why she must be contained. If her tears can turn your fire, then her grief can unmake the armies that keep this kingdom alive. Every enemy you burned will rise in memory. Every noble house that survived the Ash Wars will be judged by a girl who scrubbed floors. Raina looked up. A girl who scrubbed floors saw what your houses hid under them. The words surprised even her. Morel's eyes narrowed. Draven's gaze moved to Raina, fierce and unreadable. The scales around her steadied. The water dragon exhaled, and the whole vault filled with the scent of rain over hot stone. Morel descended the final stair. The collar brightened. Raina's throat mark answered. Pain bloomed for the first time since the scale woke, not burning pain, but pressure, as if something beneath her skin were trying to unfold, and the collar meant to force it open. Draven moved between them. The collar flared gold. His dragon shadow convulsed. Morel smiled. Do not interfere, Majesty. The collar was made from fire dragon law and water dragon grief. If your flame touches it, it will feed. Draven stopped. Every muscle in him wanted violence. Every law in the object before him made violence useful to his enemy. Raina saw the trap. If he burned Morel, The collar would drink royal fire and close on Raina by force. If he struck with steel, the red gold runes would release stored dragonfire into the vault. If he did nothing, Morel would take her. Again, always the same choice offered to kings and servants alike. Act and be blamed. Submit and be used. Raina stepped out from behind him. Draven's head turned sharply. Raina. Her name in his mouth was not claim, not command, fear. That nearly made her stay back. Instead, she faced Morel. What happens if it closes? Morel's smile returned, polished and empty. You live, comfortably, if His Majesty is generous. Your tears will be drawn during fire rites. Your blood will cool what must be cooled. The beast below remains chained. The king keeps his merciful fire. The realm survives. And me? You become what your line should have become after defeat. Morel lifted the collar. Useful. Raina looked at the chained water dragon. Its enormous eye held hers. Not begging. Waiting. The same as the water had waited at the stairs. The same as Draven had stopped before touching her. Choice. Not rescue. Not ownership. Raina reached for the tiny blue-silver scale still hovering near her throat. The collar pulled harder. The scale resisted. Morel took another step. You cannot command that relic. You do not even know your own blood name. Blood name. The word opened something in the vault. The chained dragon inhaled. The water rose to Raina's knees. Morel realized her mistake. Draven did too. Raina felt the name not in her mind, but under her scar, beneath the burn Morel had made to hide it. It was not a full name yet, only the shape of one. River, moon, breath, scale. A lullaby drowned before it reached language. She touched the scar. A tear slid down her cheek. Morel lunged with the collar. Draven moved, but the water dragon roared before he could cross the space. The sound cracked 3 iron hooks from the vault wall. Raina did not step back. She let the tear fall onto the hovering scale. Blue-silver light burst outward. The collar snapped shut. Not around her throat, around the tear. For one impossible heartbeat, the red-gold collar hung in the air, locked around a single drop of water glowing brighter than any flame in the vault. Mère Elistal. Raina stared too. Inside the tear, a tiny dragon shape opened its wings. The chained water dragon whispered a word that shook the palace foundations. Aelrith. Raina did not know whether it was a name, a title, or a memory. But the moment it sounded, the scar beneath her cheek split with blue-silver light. No blood, no wound. Only hidden scales appearing under burned skin. Draven looked at her with shock so raw it stripped the king from his face. Morel whispered. The air mark survived. The collar around the tear began to melt. And far above them, in the Ember Court, every royal war coin split open at once. The palace began paying its oldest debt in pieces. Far above the lower vault, the Ember Court erupted into screams as royal war coins split across noble belts, council purses, soldier pay chests, and tribute bowls. Raina could not see the hall, but she felt every coin break like small bones under water. Each one released a brief blue-silver pulse before the pulse vanished into the floor and ran downward through the palace stone. Toward her, toward the chained water dragon, toward the name the vault had spoken. Aelrith. The melted collar hissed around the single tear still floating before Raina's throat. The tiny dragon shape inside the tear opened its wings wider, not fully alive, but not merely a reflection either. Morel stumbled back, her court-perfect control fraying at the edges. Seal the coins. Varric turned pale. That command key is in the upper treasury. Then run. He looked at the flooded stairs, at Draven's fireless dragon shadow, at the cracked hooks trembling under the water dragon's slow breath. He did not run. Morel's eyes hardened. Coward. Draven stepped between her and Raina, sword lowered but ready. What are the war coins? Morel said nothing. The water answered. Blue-silver light spread across the flooded vault floor, and one by one, the broken pulses from the coins above gathered into images. Raina saw iron discs being forged in a royal mint. She saw black metal poured around tiny pale scales no larger than fingernails. She saw council hands sealing the scales inside war-stamped coins and sending them through the kingdom as payment, levy, debt, soldier wage, widow's pension, border tax. Everywhere fire had gone after the ash wars. The coins followed. Not currency. Containment. The water dragon's voice moved through the chamber. They broke our mercy into money and called it peace. Raina's stomach turned. She looked down at the coin that had bought her. The tiny scale inside it no longer looked like treasure or relic. It looked like a bone from something still breathing. Draven's face had gone rigid. My armies were paid with this? Morel lifted her chin. Your armies were kept from becoming monsters by this. His eyes flashed gold. Answer me. Yes, she snapped. Your wars, your borders, your treaties, your throne fire, all stabilized by fragments the council preserved when your ancestors could not control what they conquered. The water dragon's chains tightened, as if the word preserved had teeth. Raina felt anger rise through the coolness in her blood. Not loud, deep. You did not preserve them, she said. You spent them. Morel looked at her with open contempt. A servant who learned one buried name now lectures the council on war? No, Raina said. A girl sold for 1 coin is asking how many dead dragons were inside the price. The vault went silent. Even Draven looked at her, not with pity, with something sharper, almost painful. Recognition again, but changed now. He was not merely recognizing her blood. He was recognizing that she could stand in a room full of ancient power and still speak from the wound that brought her there. Morel recovered with a cold breath. Do you think that makes you holy? Your bloodline lost the ash wars. The living do what they must with what remains. The chained water dragon lifted its massive head as far as the collar runes allowed. Water poured from its horns in streams of moonlit silver. Lost, it whispered, does not mean surrendered. The word moved through Raina's throat mark. The air mark brightened beneath her scar, lines of blue-silver scale appearing under the burned skin like a hidden map slowly surfacing through ash. She pressed one hand to her cheek, not from shame now, but wonder and terror together. Draven saw the movement. His voice lowered. Does it hurt? Raina almost said no, then stopped. The old habit of making pain convenient for others rose too easily. Yes, she said, but not like before. His expression tightened. Morel smiled faintly. How moving. The king discovers conscience because the weapon has tears. Draven turned on her. My fire burned her. Your stored ember burned her, Morel said. By council right, by necessity, by the law that kept your reign from drowning before it began. Raina looked at him then. The truth stood between them like an open wound. Draven had not ordered her burning, but the fire had come from his throne. The court that obeyed him had hidden it. The council that protected his rule had used it. He did not look away from that. I did not know, he said. Raina's voice was quiet. I believe you. The words surprised him. She saw it in his face. She added, that is not the same as being clean. Something moved behind his eyes. Pain, yes, but also respect for the blade she had not softened before handing it to him. No, he said, it is not. The living scales around Raina turned once, gently, as if the air between them had become less dangerous because neither had lied. Morel's patience broke. She snatched the half-melted collar from the air. The red-gold metal burned her palms, but she held it anyway. Enough. If the coins have opened, then the levy must be reclaimed before the upper court sees too much. Varric stared at her. Reclaimed how? Morel's ruby necklace, now black as dead coals, cracked one gem at a time. From inside, each gem spilled a thread of red gold fire. Draven's dragon shadow recoiled. The water dragon roared. Raina felt the threads reach for every blue-silver pulse, descending from the broken coins, not to seal them again, to pull them into the collar, to forge a new chain. Morel's face twisted with effort. If mercy was spent through coins, it can be taxed back through blood. The collar opened again. This time, it was not reaching only for Raina's throat. It was reaching for every scale fragment in the palace. All the blue-silver lights falling through the stone jerked toward Morel's hands. The chained water dragon convulsed as pieces of its broken line were dragged upward through the runes. Raina cried out, not because the collar touched her, but because each stolen fragment passed through her air mark as if her blood were the road. Draven moved. Morel smiled through the strain. Strike me, and the collar drinks your fire too. He stopped. Again the same trap. Violence fed it. Delay strengthened it. Raina knew then what Morel had built her life around, forcing every decent choice to become useful to cruelty. The tiny dragon inside Raina's tear beat its wings once. Aelrith. The name moved through her, not asking her to command, asking her to remember. Raina looked at the broken coin, then at the thousands of blue-silver sparks being dragged toward the collar. Coins were payment. Coins were debt. Coins moved because people accepted their value. She reached down and picked up the black iron coin that had bought her. Draven's eyes sharpened. Raina. She held the split coin in her palm and faced Morel. You said I was bought with this. Morel's smile flickered. You were. Raina closed her fingers around the coin until its broken edge bit her skin. Then I returned the payment. The blue-silver scales around her flared. The iron coin dissolved into water in her hand. The pull of the collar faltered. Merelistal. Raina lifted her wet palm, voice shaking but clear. No debt. The words struck the vault like a bell. Above them, in the ember court, every broken war coin turned to water. The red gold threads snapped. Blue-silver sparks flooded downward, not into Morel's collar, but into the chained water dragon's wounds. One black iron chain shattered. Then another. Draven looked at Raina as if he had just watched a kingdom's oldest law drown in a servant girl's hand. Morel's face went white. The collar in her hands split open and released a scream of trapped steam. For the first time, she truly stepped back. The water dragon lifted its head higher, blue-silver eyes blazing. And from the deepest part of the vault, beneath even the dragon's chains, a second voice answered Raina's words. Older, darker, firebound. No debt, it said. Then let the king pay what his throne owes. The lower vault split beneath Draven's feet. Not wide enough to swallow him, only enough to reveal fire under the water. Raina stared as red gold light breathed up through the flooded floor, dark and ancient, moving beneath the salt water like a sleeping beast opening one eye. The blue-silver water did not extinguish it. The fire did not boil the water. They circled each other in the cracked stone, two old enemies forced into the same wound. Draven did not step back. The water dragon lifted its chained head, scales blazing with the fragments returning from the dissolved war coins. 3 black iron chains hung broken from its wings now, but more remained. Around its throat, its ribs, its tail, its enormous claws. Every freed fragment entered its wounds like rain entering drought. The older voice came again from beneath the fire. Let the king pay what his throne owes. The words did not sound like Morel's law. They sounded older than law. Draven looked down into the crack. Show yourself. The red gold fire rose. It shaped itself into a dragon's skull without flesh, all burning horns and hollow eyes. Not a living dragon, not a ghost. A throne memory. The first royal flame bound beneath the palace, fed by war, tribute, and every victory song the Ember Court had ever sung. The council called me crown fire, it said. The dragons called me hunger. Morel went very still. Raina saw it. So did Draven. You knew this was here, he said. Morel's face had lost its easy polish. Every throne has a foundation. This is not stone. No, she said. It is what keeps kings from becoming ordinary men. The fire skull turned toward Raina. The moment its hollow eyes found her, the scales around her body tightened, not in fear of flame, but in recognition of something that had once bitten deep into her bloodline. Water paid mercy. Fire paid conquest. Council paid neither. Raina's throat mark pulsed painfully. She understood then why the old voice had answered when she returned the coin. The debt had not ended. It had only named the debtor. Draven's jaw flexed. What does my throne owe? The crown fire laughed without sound. A throne that spent water to sweeten flame owes back what it stole from both. The water dragon's great eye closed. For the first time, Raina felt not only its pain, but its exhaustion. Generations of tears drawn into coins. Mercy broken into fragments. Fire forced to wear compassion it had not chosen. Kings praised for restraint that came from a chained dragon's wound. Draven looked at the water around his boots. My fire was never merciful, he said. The words seemed to cost him more than blood. Raina felt them strike the vault. Not denial. Witness. The water dragon opened its eye again. Not never, fire child. Forgotten. Morel's voice cut through the chamber. This is exactly why the council kept the system intact. A king who questions the source of his power will hesitate when the realm needs flame. Draven turned toward her. A realm that survives by feeding on chains is not protected. It is postponed. Varric found courage in desperation. Majesty, if the water dragon is freed all at once, your fire may fail across the kingdom. Borderwards, warforges, dragon gates. Then they were built wrong. The simplicity of it stunned the room. Raina looked at him. He was still frightening, still armored in power, still the man whose throne fire had marked her life. But there, in the flooded dark, he had chosen a truth that made him smaller before it could make him worthy. Morel saw the danger in that. A king who could become smaller could no longer be easily steered by fear. She lifted the cracked collar again. Its red gold frame had split, but not died. The runes inside still glowed weakly, drinking steam from the air. If he will not pay as king, she said, then the purchased debt, body pays in his place. Raina's scales flared. Draven's sword rose. Morel smiled. Debt law named her property before the court. She dissolved the coin, not the purchase. One coin bought the body. The body carries the blood. The blood can settle the throne. No, Raina said. The word came before fear. Small, clear. The water stilled around her knees. Morel looked at her as if amused by a servant correcting grammar. No? Raina touched the scar on her face, feeling the hidden scales beneath it now. No longer only a wound, but proof of what survived the wound. You priced me, she said. You did not own me. The living scales circled her faster. The tiny dragon inside her tear beat its wings once. Draven looked at her, not stepping in, not taking the words from her mouth. That mattered. So Raina kept going. You hid a scale in the coin. You hid a mark under my scar. You hid a dragon under the throne. Everything you call law is just hiding with better clothes. The water dragon rumbled. The crownfire's hollow eyes brightened. Morel's face tightened. Pretty defiance does not break royal debt. No, Raina said, but witness does. She turned to Draven. The vault seemed to close around that turn. The Dragon King and the Ash Girl stood facing each other in floodwater and old fire, with a chained water dragon behind her and a hunger-made crown fire beneath him. Raina's voice lowered. If the throne owes, then the throne must choose to pay. Not with me, not with another chained thing. You. Draven did not look away. What payment? The crown fire answered. First flame. Every remaining brazier above the palace guttered. Even from below, Raina felt the ember court lose heat. Draven understood. So did Mairelle. Her eyes lit with sudden hope. Majesty, no. The first flame is the core of royal dragonfire. Without it, the Vare line loses command over every fire, oath in the realm. Your armies, your gates, your throne. My throne, Draven said, seems expensive for everyone but me. Raina's chest hurt. Not from magic. From the shape of his choice. The water dragon's voice softened. First, flame given freely can become covenant. Taken by force becomes another chain. Draven looked at Raina. If I give it, does it free you? The question was too direct. Too dangerous. She had been sold to him in front of laughing nobles. She had expected ownership, then suspicion, then perhaps reluctant protection. Not this. A king asking whether cutting out the root of his power might return something stolen from her. I do not know, she said. It was the only honest answer. Draven nodded once. Honesty seemed enough. Mère Elemoud. She flung the broken collar toward the crack in the floor. Red gold runes burst outward, wrapping around the crown fire before Draven could step in. The fire skull opened its jaws, and the collar forced them wide. Varric cried out, Lady Marelle, that will wake the old hunger. That is the point, she snapped. The crown fire roared. Water blasted against the walls. The water dragon strained against its remaining chains. Raina was thrown backward, and this time Draven caught her before she struck the stone. The scales between them flared, but they did not repel him. His arms were hot, not burning, held. For one heartbeat, neither moved. Then Draven released her carefully and stepped into the crack where fire and water met. Raina, he said without turning. Her name sounded like something he trusted to remain after power left him. If this burns wrong, do not let them use you to mend it. Morel screamed, "Do not!" Draven placed his bare hand into the crown fire. Gold light ripped through the vault. His dragon shadow erupted behind him. Wings spread wide. Chest split open by a single white flame, brighter than war. The water dragon lifted its head. Raina saw the first flame inside Draven's palm. Small, pure, terribly alive. Then the old hunger beneath the throne opened its jaws and swallowed the Dragon King whole. Gold light sealed over the crack like a wound closing too fast. Draven vanished beneath it. For one breath, the lower vault forgot how to move. The water dragon froze against its chains. Morel stood with one hand still lifted. Triumph and terror mixed across her face. Varric sank to his knees in the floodwater, whispering prayers to every fire god whose names the council had not outlawed. Raina stared at the place where the Dragon King had stood. The water around her legs turned warm. Not boiling, grieving. "Bring him back," she said. No one answered. The crown fire beneath the floor pulsed once, red gold under stone, and the entire palace shook. Far above, the Ember Court roared with panic. Every fire oath tied to Draven's bloodline flickered. Every royal brazier guttered. Every dragonbone pillar groaned, as if the palace had just lost the thing it was built to fear. Morel found her voice first. "You see?" Her words shook, but she sharpened them quickly. "This is what happens when kings mistake guilt for justice. The first flame is gone. The throne is open." Raina turned on her. The blue-silver scales around Raina did not flare wildly now. They drew close, smooth and cold, forming a half-shield over her throat mark and scar. "He is not gone," Raina said. Morel laughed once. "You do not know enough to tell the difference." "No," Raina said, "but you want him gone too badly." That struck. The water dragon's great eye shifted toward Raina, and something like approval moved through the flood. The old hunger does not swallow quickly, little river blood. Raina faced the chained dragon. Then where is he? Where all crowns hide what they have eaten. The cracked floor glowed again, and the floodwater became clear as glass. Beneath it, Raina saw not stone, but a vast hollow of fire. Draven stood within it, small against a storm of red gold flame, one hand still clenched around the white core of the first flame. Around him circled shapes made of hunger, dragon skulls without bodies, old kings with burning mouths, battle standards turned to ash, and crowns melting into teeth. He was alive, but every breath cost him. Raina stepped toward the crack. Morel's voice cracked through the vault. "Touch that fire, and it will take you too." Raina looked back. "You said my bloodline bends flame. I said it can be used." The difference stood between them like a blade. Raina looked down at the tiny dragon shape still flickering inside the floating tear near her throat. It was brighter now, wings unfolding, blue-silver body no larger than a bird, eyes like the chained dragon's. "Aelrith," she whispered. The tiny dragon lifted its head. The name did not feel like command. It felt like return, the water dragon rumbled. "Not your name alone. Not its name alone. Blood name. Line name. Door name." Raina understood only enough to be afraid. The coin had hidden a scale. The scar had hidden a mark. Her tear had hidden a dragon shape. Everything in her life had been used to cover something else. Now the hiding was ending faster than she could survive. Draven's voice came faintly through the fire below. "Raina." She looked down. He was not calling for rescue. He was warning her away. That almost made her smile. Not because anything was amusing, but because even swallowed by the foundation of his throne, he still thought command could dress itself as protection. She knelt at the edge of the crack. "Do not tell me to run from the debt you stepped into for me." His face turned upward through the flame. The old hunger wrapped a burning crown around his shoulders. Morel seized her chance. He chose payment. Let him pay. The realm can survive with a new fire bond once we bind the heir properly. The half-melted collar twitched in the water. Raina did not look at it. She looked at the chained water dragon. "If I go in, do I free him?" "Not if you go in as payment." The answer moved through her bones. Raina's throat tightened. "Then how?" The water dragon's eye closed. "Water alone drowns. Fire alone devours." Covenant teaches both to stop before hunger becomes law. Covenant. The word struck the blue-silver scales, and they turned outward like listening wings. Raina looked at Draven beneath the fire. He has the first flame, and you have the first tear. Raina's hand rose to her face. No tear fell now. For once, grief had gone still. She could not force crying. She would not manufacture sorrow for another ritual. That was what Morel wanted. Her pain made useful, drawn out, measured, worn like a collar. So Raina closed her eyes and did not reach for grief. She reached for the first time she had not been ashamed of surviving. The moment the dragonfire turned into scales, the moment her scar cooled, the moment Draven asked if the mark hurt and accepted the answer when she said yes, the moment she returned the coin and the old debt listened. A tear slipped free, not from fear, from recognition. It floated from her cheek into the air, blue, silver, and bright, joining the tiny dragon shape. Aelrith opened its wings fully. The crown fire below surged upward. Morel shouted, "Stop her!" Varric tried to stand. The water dragon moved. One of its broken chains whipped across the vault floor, knocking him back into the floodwater. The council guards fled toward the stairs. Marelle lunged for the collar. Raina reached the crack first. Draven's voice thundered from below, raw with fear now. "Raina, no!" She answered him with the truth he had given her. "I choose with my own blood." Then she stepped into the gold fire. It did not burn like the kitchen. It remembered the kitchen. That was worse. Flames surrounded her, and every lie ever told about that night screamed through her scar. Accident, servant carelessness, false relic, damaged claim, useful body. The old hunger tried to make those names real by feeding them back to her in Draven's voice, Morel's voice, her own voice as a child who had believed pain must be deserved if nobles wrote it down. Raina fell through gold. Then blue-silver wings caught her. Aelrith was no longer tiny. The dragon made of tear and scale, wrapped around her like living water. Together they plunged into the hollow beneath the throne, where Draven stood chained by molten crowns. His first flame burned in his hand. The old hunger had wrapped around his arm, drinking from it. Draven looked at Raina as if she were the one impossible thing left in the world. "You should not be here." "No," she said, landing before him in fire that bent away from Aelrith's wings. "I should not have been sold either." For one breath, even the old hunger quieted. Raina looked at the white flame in his palm. "Do not give it to the hunger," she said. "Give it to what your throne stole from." Draven's gaze sharpened. "Covenant," he said. Above them, Morel screamed in the vault. The half-melted collar slammed into the fire hollow from above. Red gold runes, spreading like a net. It wrapped around Raina and Draven both. The old hunger roared in triumph. And the first flame in Draven's hand began to turn black. The blackening began at Draven's fingertips. The first flame, white a heartbeat ago, darkened where the collar net touched it. Red gold runes tightened around his wrist, then around Raina's throat mark, tying fire and water together in the oldest shape the council knew. Nut Covenant. Leash. Raina felt the lie immediately. It did not burn like flame. It pressed like ownership. The same pressure as debt chains around her wrists, the same weight as a veil placed over a scar someone else had made, the same cold insult as one iron coin rolled to her feet before a laughing court. The old hunger roared around them, delighted. Above, through the crack in the fire hollow, Morel's voice came thin but sharp. "Now you understand. Fire and water do not meet as equals. One must hold, one must feed." Draven pulled against the molten crown binding his arm. "Raina, step back." She almost laughed, but there was no breath for it. "There is nowhere behind you that is safe." His eyes met hers, through the black gold flame. For the first time, the Dragon King looked not like a man afraid to lose power, but like a man afraid his power would hurt the person standing closest to it. That fear mattered. The collar net tightened. Aelrith spread blue-silver wings around Raina, but the runes bit into the tear dragon's edges. Each mark that struck Aelrith flashed with images. Water dragons chained beneath the palace, scales hammered into war, coins, tears collected in red, gold vessels, royal fire cooled by stolen mercy, and then praised as discipline. Raina understood Morel's trap. The council had never wanted fire and water to destroy each other. It wanted them close enough to use. close enough to bind, close enough to call theft balance. Draven's first flame darkened further. His dragon shadow, half visible in the fire hollow, convulsed as black streaks crawled across its chest. If the flame turned fully black, the old hunger would not merely swallow him. It would wear him. It would return to the throne above with Draven's face, Draven's fire, and Morel's law inside its mouth. Raina placed both hands over the collar net between them. Pain burst through her palms. Draven's voice hardened. "Do not take the recoil." "I'm not taking it." The runes flared. She forced herself to breathe. "I am reading it." Aelrith turned its head toward her, blue-silver eyes bright with sudden understanding. Raina looked at the red-gold script. She could not read council language. She had never been taught court law, but she knew the grammar of being used. She knew where a sentence hit its blade. The first rune meant property. The second meant cooling. The third meant blood drawn. The fourth meant permanent. The fifth, Raina's breath caught. The fifth rune did not belong. It was older than the others, carved beneath them, nearly swallowed by gold. Consent. The council had written over it. Not erased. Hidden. Raina looked at Draven. There was a true covenant before the collar. The old hunger hissed. Draven's eyes sharpened. Where? Under the law, they added. He looked down at the net binding them, then closed his burned hand around the first flame. Black fire crawled up his wrist, but he did not pull away. What did it require? Raina touched the hidden rune. The fire hollow changed. For one instant, the old hunger vanished, and they stood in a memory older than the Ash Wars, a fire dragon and a water dragon, circling above an unburned valley. Flame met rain in the sky, not as enemies, but as weather. Villages below looked up without fear. A fire dragon lowered its head. A water dragon answered. Between them formed a white-blue light that did not belong to either alone. Then men came with crowns. Councils came with ledgers. Wars came with reasons. The memory shattered. Raina came back to the fire hollow with tears on her face and fury in her throat. The first covenant was not mercy stolen by fire, she said. It was fire choosing not to devour because water stood beside it freely. Draven stared at her. The words entered him deeper than accusation. Freely, he repeated. The first flame in his palm brightened once beneath the black. Above them, Morel screamed, "Do not listen to her. She has no training, no law, no throne. Blood." Raina lifted her head toward the crack. "No, I have the part your law buried." The old hunger struck. A wave of black fire crashed toward her. Aelrith wrapped around Raina, but Draven moved first. Not with command, not with royal flame. He opened his hand and placed the first flame between them, unguarded. "Then stand beside it," he said. The words were not soft. They were harder than softness. They asked without taking. Raina placed her tear-bright hand beneath the flame, not touching his skin, not surrendering to his power. Beside it, her first tear rose from Aelrith's chest and met the first flame in the air. White fire and blue-silver water touched. The collar net shrieked. Every false rune burned away. Property vanished first. Then, blood drawn. Then permanent. Only the hidden word remained. Consent. The fire hollow exploded with light. Not gold. Not blue. Both. The old hunger howled as the covenant light struck its burning skull. The crown shapes around Draven's body cracked apart. The blackness pulled back from his wrist. Aelrith grew, wings filling the hollow, not shielding Raina from Draven's fire now, but teaching it the shape of return. Draven's dragon shadow rose behind him, no longer fireless, no longer black-wounded. Gold flame burned through its chest, threaded with blue-silver rain. Above, in the lower vault, the chained water dragon lifted its head and broke another chain. Then another. Then the collar in Meryl's hands shattered. Her scream followed the broken pieces down into the fire hollow. But Morel was not finished. The fire hollow cracked open, throwing Raina and Draven upward in a rush of steam and light. They struck the flooded vault floor hard. Aelrith full. Draven landed beside her on one knee, first flame burning steady in his palm, smaller now, but alive, no longer white with isolation. Blue-silver ran through it. The water dragon pulled against its final chains. The old hunger beneath the floor recoiled, wounded but not gone. Morel stood at the base of the stairs, hair loosened, hands bloodless from the broken collar, eyes fixed on Draven's changed flame. For one moment, she looked defeated. Then bells began to ring above the palace. War bells. Varric lifted his head in horror. The Ember Court. Mayorelli smiled. "If the throne will not contain the water dragon heir," she said, "then the houses will see what she wakes." She turned and struck the wall behind her with the last black ruby from her necklace. The sealed doors to the upper hall burst open. Far above, the nobles who had been trapped in the Ember Court saw the flooded stairs, the freed blue-silver light, the altered Dragon King, and the chained water dragon rising beneath their palace. Fear roared louder than truth. Morel's voice carried upward like a blade. "Behold, your king's new mercy. The drowned bloodline has taken his fire." Raina struggled to stand. Draven rose beside her, first flame in one hand, sword in the other. The water dragon's final collar cracked, and from above, every noble house drew steel against the girl who had returned their debt. Steel flashed in the flooded stairway. Not one blade. Dozens. The noble houses of the Ember Court poured toward the lower vault in silk, armor, jewels, and terror. Some had swords drawn. Some had fire oath rings burning on their hands. Some carried war coins split open in their palms, staring at the blue-silver residue inside as if mercy itself had betrayed them. Morel stood before them like a wound pretending to be a banner. "There," she said, pointing at Raina. "The drowned heir has broken the king's fire." Fear moved through the nobles faster than water. Raina stood beside Draven with Aelrith's blue-silver light circling her shoulders and the first covenant still burning in the air between her tear and his flame. Behind them, the chained water dragon pulled against its final collar. Each breath it took sent salt water rolling across the vault floor. Draven lifted his sword. The nobles stopped, not because they trusted him, because he was still the Dragon King. Morel saw the hesitation and struck at it. "Look at him. His flame is altered. His throne, fire carries her water. If you kneel now, every war, oath in this kingdom will answer a servant girl's tears." Raina felt the old insult try to enter her. Servant girl, ash girl, debt body. But the words no longer found the same hollow places. Her scar still marked her face. The burns still lived in her memory. She was not made untouched by revelation. She was made harder to rename. Draven looked at the nobles. "She did not break my fire." The first flame in his palm rose, gold threaded with blue-silver rain. "She returned what your coin law stole from it." The water dragon gave a low rumble. The broken coins in the nobles' hands dissolved at once. Gasps filled the stairway as black iron turned into water, slipping through jeweled fingers, falling into the flood below. In each falling drop, images flashed. Scales sealed into currency. Water dragon tears poured into war furnaces. Council ledgers naming chains as tribute. A noble lord with a fire oath ring stepped back. "We did not know." Raina believed some of them. Not all. That mattered. The same truth could reveal ignorance and guilt in the same room. Morel's face hardened. "Ignorance does not save a kingdom. Power does." "No," Raina said. Her voice was not loud, but the water carried it. "Power only tells you what you can take. It never tells you what you owe." The final collar around the water dragon's throat cracked. Morel spun toward it, panic finally breaking through her poise. She seized Varric's arm and dragged him forward. "Open the debt ledger." Varric's face had gone gray. "My lady, open it." He pulled a small black book from inside his robes. Its cover was iron-scaled, its pages sealed with red gold thread. The moment it opened, the old hunger beneath the vault stirred again. Raina felt it. So did Draven. The ledger was not record. It was appetite written into law. Morel lifted it toward the nobles. "By crown debt, war debt, blood debt, and survival debt, I call all fire oaths to reclaim the drowned bloodline before the kingdom falls." Every fire oath ring in the stairway ignited. Nobles cried out as flames wrapped around their hands and pulled their arms toward Raina. Some resisted, some did not. The old law had learned to make fear feel like duty. Draven stepped forward. Raina caught his wrist. He stopped immediately. The entire vault seemed to notice. She looked at the fire oaths dragging noble hands toward her. "If you burn them, the ledger will call it proof." His jaw tightened. "Then what do you choose?" The question steadied her more than any shield. Raina looked at the debt ledger, then at the water spreading from the dissolved coins. Debt had brought her here. Debt had priced her. Debt had hidden scales inside iron and called stolen mercy payment. So she answered, in the only language the room understood. "No debt," she said. The first tear rose from her cheek again, bright and blue-silver. Draven lifted the first flame beside it. This time, they did not touch as rescue. They touched as agreement. The covenant light moved outward in a ring. Every fire oath flame froze. Every water drop lifted. The ledger shook in Morel's hands. Raina stepped toward her. A debt needs a debtor. The black book opened wider. Names appeared across its pages: burned villages, dragon bones, dead soldiers, drowned hatchlings, stolen scales, royal victories, council settlements, servant bodies, war widows, border taxes, ash houses. Too many names. Too much blood. The old hunger wanted all of it counted forever, so nothing could ever be forgiven without permission. Raina looked at Draven. His expression told her he understood. A king could not repay generations by pretending one sacrifice was enough. So he lowered his sword and placed the first flame over the ledger. "I name the throne debtor," he said. The nobles went silent. Morel's eyes widened. "You cannot." Draven's voice did not rise. "I can. I should have long ago." The first flame burned brighter. "I name House Heir debtor to the water dragon line, debtor to every scale hidden in war, coin, debtor to every village spared by stolen mercy and never told its price." The ledger screamed. Black pages curled. The old hunger beneath the floor opened its jaws, furious. Draven did not stop. "And I name the debt, unpaid by blood." The scream cut off. Raina stepped beside him. "Unpaid by chains," she said. The water dragon lifted its head. "Unpaid by servants," Raina continued. Aelrith spread its wings around her, blue, silver, and bright. "Unpaid by heirs hidden under scars." The ledger cracked down the spine. Morel tried to shut it, but the book burned cold in her hands. Then how is it paid? Raina looked at the chained water dragon. The answer came from the covenant before it came from her mouth. "By return." Draven turned toward the great dragon. "What was taken from your line will be named. What remains in coin, vault, weapon, and oath will be returned. No crown will draw mercy through a chain again." The water dragon's final collar split. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the chained beast rose. Black iron fell from its wings in thunderous pieces. Dragonbone spears cracked and sank beneath the flood. The blue-silver dragon unfurled itself slowly, terribly, filling the vault with a body like moonlit water and storm-scaled memory. The nobles dropped to their knees. Not because Draven commanded them, because an ancient wrong had stood up. Morel staggered backward. "If you free it, you lose control of dragonfire." Draven looked at her. Then control was the wrong god. The water dragon lowered its enormous head until one blue-silver eye faced Raina. "Little river blood." Raina trembled. "I do not know how to be what they call me." The dragon's breath washed over her, cool as rain. "Good. Names made by fear are cages. Choose the one that opens." Aelrith circled Raina once, then entered the scale mark beneath her scar. Blue-silver light moved through the burned skin, not erasing it, but changing its meaning. The scar remained. The hidden scales beneath it glowed like a river seen under ice. Raina touched her cheek. For the first time, she did not wish the scar gone. Morel lunged for the broken ledger. Varric stopped her. His hands shook, but he held her back. She stared at him with disbelief. "You owe me your house." He looked at the dissolved coin water around his feet. "No debt." The words were weak, but they were enough. The covenant light struck the ledger. It burst open, and every hidden debt record flew upward through the palace. War coin ledgers, chain contracts, servant settlements, false relic reports, royal ember authorizations, Ashwyck fire testimonies sealed and rewritten. The truth scattered through the ember court in blue-silver fire. Mairelle fell to her knees. Not dead, not burned, named. The water coiled around her wrists like clear chains. Draven looked down at her. "Lady Merrill Voss, you will live to account for every coin, every collar, every royal ember used under council seal." Her voice was venom. "You think confession will hold a kingdom?" "No," Draven said. "Return will." By dawn, the Ember Court no longer smelled only of smoke. Salt water ran through the grooves between marble stones. The dragonbone pillars stood black and wet, no longer weeping, but clean. Every noble house surrendered its war coins. Some did so trembling. Some wept. Some cursed Raina's name under their breath until the blue witness fire in the water showed what their houses had hidden. The lower vault remained open, not as prison, as wound, as witness. The water dragon did not leave the palace that morning. It curled beneath the throne chamber with its chains broken around it, not servant to the crown, not enemy to the flame, but living proof that mercy could not be minted. Draven stood beside Raina at the edge of the opened floor, while the first true light of morning entered the Ember Court. He had not taken back the one coin. There was nothing to take. It had become water. "I bought you before them," he said quietly. Raina looked at him. He did not hide from the shame in that sentence. Then he opened his hand. Inside his palm burned the first flame, now small and steady, threaded with blue-silver light. It no longer roared. It listened. "I release every claim debt law gave me," he said. "Your body, your blood, your tears, your name, none of it belongs to my throne." The court heard. So did the water dragon below. So did Raina. The words did not heal everything. They did something cleaner. They stopped adding to the wound. Raina touched the scale mark under her scar. "And if I stay?" His golden eyes held hers. "Then you stay as witness to what we return. Not as mercy drawn for my fire. Not as a relic. Not as a debt paid in flesh. What would I be to you? The Dragon King, feared by courts and wars and every house that had ever warmed itself near stolen flame, looked almost afraid to answer. "The reason my fire remembers where to stop," he said, "and the woman I will not touch unless she chooses the heat." Raina felt the blue-silver scales along her scar cool, then settle. She stepped closer, not into his arms, not yet, but into the space where fire and water no longer fought for ownership. "Then remake the throne first," she said. Draven bowed his head. "With you beside me, if you choose." Below them, the water dragon exhaled. Blue-silver mist rose through the broken floor and wrapped around the throne steps. Draven's dragon shadow appeared behind him again, gold and black, but now rain moved through its wings. It lowered its head to Raina, not as subject to queen, not as beast to master, but as fire recognizing the bloodline that had returned mercy without becoming a chain. Raina looked once at the place where the iron coin had rolled to her feet. There was only water now. She had entered the Ember Court as a burned servant sold for one coin. She stood at dawn beside the Dragon King as the last river blood of a drowned line, the girl whose tears did not weaken fire, but taught it to remember. And when Draven's first flame leaned toward her, it did not burn. It became scales.